All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Pave the Way Podcast. I'm here with my buddy Michael Singletary out of the Austin, Texas area, and I'm really excited to have him on. We're going to talk about how he got started, what his business looks like down in Texas. He's doing some big things, and then we're also going to talk about really, success when it comes to skip tracing, having solid data, and cold calling and texting sellers, because Michael is an expert at that. So, Michael, thanks so much for coming on today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let's get right into it, man. I know you a little bit. We met at a mastermind a couple of years ago, and we've had a couple conversations, but I really don't know much about you and your background. So I'd like to kind of get into, what was Michael Singletary doing before he was a real estate investor?
That's a funny question, man. So I like to tell this story about me because it kind of gives other people hope because it wasn't that long ago, probably about 7, 8 years ago when I started in real estate. And I remember sitting in RIA clubs and stuff like that, or talking to my friends that were in real estate and thinking that it was so far above me, right?
Yeah.
I was in the hair industry for 25 years. I owned high-end hair salons, worked in high-end hair salons. I knew nothing about buying a house. I mean, I never bought a house, never. I didn't even know what wholesaling was, much less data, right? And so started about 7 years ago, got into it. And I think like most of us, whenever, I get into something, I'm just straight OCD and just dove right in, went straight into flipping. So we started flipping houses in Austin. And it was a high ARV area. So I did that, but it didn't really serve my needs, man. I don't know, it's just super stressful. I just wasn't overly happy. I didn't like my life at that moment, right? But then I just try to pivot and try to find something else. And like, because my ultimate goal has always been, can I work off my laptop in another country in the summertime with my kids? I have three small kids, and that's super important to me to have that type of flexibility. And so I got into the technology side, and now obviously we started Skip Force about a year and a half ago, and haven't turned back. I mean, I still invest. We don't buy as high of a volume as we used to, but it still keeps me relevant and gives me the ability to talk to investors and know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. So it's funny you bring up Austin, Texas. Larry Higgins and I, we did a deal in Austin a couple years ago, and I'm telling you what, we made a good amount of money on it, but I was blown away with how expensive real estate was in Austin. It was on Elmira Street,
Okay.
somewhere in Austin. It was kind of in the hood. I actually drove by
Yeah.
there,
East side,
and
right?
yeah, this little dump house,
Yeah.
like the ARV was like in the fours or the fives, and I'm like, what the hell? Like Austin, Texas, and now obviously that's it's almost getting to California prices. So when
That's
you're doing
crazy.
deals in Austin, like what can you do at least to really separate yourselves from a lot of the other competition there? Because not only do you have a lot of investors in Austin, but you have a lot of savvy homeowners who know what their properties are worth. So what do you guys kind of do when you do deals in that area? Maybe on the marketing side and then on the exit strategy side to maximize your profits and at the same time, get properties, at a good price from the right marketing.
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, truth be told, we're really not in Austin that much any longer. I buy in the outskirts, but I
Okay.
buy mostly in San Antonio now. But when we
Okay.
were buying a lot in Austin, you really had to maximize the deal. Just like you said, like that house that you bought, how many years ago was it?
It was 2.5 years ago.
Okay, it's probably worth 500 now or something crazy, right? The dirt. I mean, we bought a half acre lot of dirt for $500,000 and build condos on it. So in Austin, you really have to maximize the square footage. You build on the back called a ADU. It's kind of like a
Oh yeah.
granny flat or stuff like that, where you buy the front house pretty much at retail, so that you make the money on the back end because that goes for three, four, $500 a square foot, right? And so you could build for 175, 200 square foot. So that's how you have to really be creative. When we were here, we were doing super high end flips, new construction. They're all seven figures, super stressful. And whenever I was always worried about the turn, right? I think like everybody was, and we thought this was it, but obviously it isn't because it's still just going crazy. And for me at that time, I'm like, this wasn't. If I need to pivot, I didn't feel real comfortable in Austin. Now I know other investors here are totally crushing it, but for me, I just went over to San Antonio. It's right in our backyard. That way I could keep it as a rental. I could hotel it. I could wholesale it. I could do a lot of different things there.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's funny
Yeah.
that San Antonio, I didn't know it was that close to Austin. I was in Austin and I met with my buddy and he lived in San Antonio. And I'm like, oh, he's like, oh, I got to drive home tonight. I'm like, oh, all right. Like,
Yeah,
what are
dude.
you talking about? He's like, yeah, San Antonio's like an hour away. And I'm like, what? Like, I thought San
Yeah.
Antonio was like 4 hours away, like by Mexico for some. I see my geography was obviously not on point at the time, but so you just made a good
It's a
point.
trip, man. Austin's like a suburb of San Antonio.
Yeah, right. Dude,
You know what I mean?
Austin. That was probably one of the coolest cities I've ever been to, and I was only there for a day, and I was
Yeah.
there. We went out to like a cool little brewery, had dinner, and it was like such a trendy, cool town. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I could totally like
It's
live off.
totally dope, man. I mean, we moved from Houston, so and I love Houston. I have nothing bad to say about it, but Austin's a different animal. It's beautiful. The only other city that I actually, when I visit, I go, hey, I can move there, would be yours, in San Diego, right?
Yeah,
Otherwise, I really dig our city for sure.
yeah. Except for the taxes, you're gonna pay Governor Newsom. I don't think you'd like that very much.
No, no, I couldn't handle that. But property taxes here kicks our, you know what?
Yeah, yeah. You guys
you
make
know.
up for it with the property taxes. That's awesome. So when you guys are doing stuff in San Antonio now, so what are your marketing, like what are you guys doing when you're doing deals there? What are you guys doing on the marketing end to get solid deals in the pipeline?
Yeah, cool, cool, man. I mean, we started a cold calling company, so we've been in cold calling and text pretty heavily for the last 3 or 4 years, right? It's kind of how I got into skip tracing because we kind of started text 4 years ago. Not a whole lot of people were doing it at that time, but texting right now things are changing drastically, as you probably already well know, and it's going to change quite a bit these next 12 months. So we went heavily into cold calling. We have about for our business, we have about 6 ISAs that work for us. We have about 18 ISAs total that works for the company. And then we do PPC, and then we do a little bit of direct mail, but we kind of shut that off, truthfully. So it's heavily cold calling and PPC right now.
Okay. And are you guys like with the cold calling? The thing I've done a lot of cold calling too, not at a
Mhm.
mass scale like you, but are you like what are you seeing like with on the cold call side? I'll give you an example. Like when I get a lot of good deals from cold calling, it's generally not the first touch I make with them. It's
Mhm.
like the third or the fourth time we try to call them. They see that we're serious because we've called them a few times, and then from there, the sales cycle is a little bit longer, but man, we've gotten some home run deals from just cold calling. Like right now, I'm doing a $40,000 banger up in New York, and it was from a freaking cold call. And I'm like, what the hell? Like this guy answered the phone and he wanted to sell, and it's an apartment building. And so, what are you like besides that? Like, what are you guys doing to make sure that you're getting every single, ounce of juice out of those cold calling efforts and dollars?
Yeah, for sure, man. It's a great question, by the way. I mean, I think that people they quit too quickly on cold calling, right? So cold calling is a pipeline play, as you well
Yeah.
know, as you pointed out, right? And you have to look at it like any other campaign. If you're looking at a direct mail campaign, that's a 6 month commitment, right?
Oh
If you
yeah.
really want to effectively execute it, it's the same thing with cold calling. It's a pipeline play, and you're getting people on the cold end of the cycle. They're just raising their hand. A lot of times, they haven't even called anybody. They have postcards, but they haven't even reached out to anybody yet. So you're already building that relationship. So if you're expecting to close it right off the bat, very rarely does it happen. So if you want to be successful, it really has to do with everything has to do with follow up. You have to be super, super aggressive with your follow up, especially that first couple of weeks to establish that relationship. So if you don't have really strong AMs, or we use a lot of lead managers in that process, the prospector ISA brings it in. The lead managers really kind of follow up pretty heavily, and then if they raise their hand again, it goes back to the AM. But it's a heavy, heavy call rotation for sure.
That's a great answer, man. That's so actionable too, because I think a lot of people listening right now, if they're cold calling, they just they don't execute the strategy if like the right way. I wouldn't even say
Yeah.
effectively, but they're going out there, their contact rates what like 9-10%, and then out of that whatever they're like, oh, they got one lead. And it's like, yeah, if you look at it like you're just filling up that funnel with potential opportunities, and then once you
Exactly.
have that funnel filled, that's when you really go in and actually sell eventually. People think that I think a lot of the gurus, Michael, they paint this picture. Oh yeah, you're gonna call a list, and then you're gonna get someone who's desperate right away, and they're gonna just give their house away. And listen, that happens once in a while, but that's definitely not the
It's not
common.
the norm, man. Just like
No.
you said, it's not the norm. Nobody's going to go, hey, yeah, just take this for 50% or whatever the case is. And when they do, it's really a POS. You know what I mean? It's
Oh
bad.
yeah,
It's way worse
yeah.
than
You
they
don't
put it
want it.
out to
They
be,
just title
right?
it.
I mean, paint carpet, but you go there and literally this happened. It was like the whole thing was fire damage, right? But it's just one of those things that we like it because we get a hold of them. We're establishing a relationship. By the time another investor comes into the picture, we've already, obviously built our rapport, all that stuff, right? And typically the sales cycle is about 2 or 3 months. I mean,
Yeah.
and we when we onboard people to our cold calling service, we haven't gone live with it yet. It's going to be called ISA Pros. We have about 6 clients right now, so it's all still in beta. We always got to prep them, man. I think that's super key on the education portion of it. Whenever you're going in, it's like, listen, if you're expecting something the first month or this is deemed a failure for you, man, this is not for you, right? You
Totally.
got to give it 2 or 3 months. And then in 2 or 3 months, you start getting that traction because people are raising their hands. They already raised their hands and say, hey, I want to buy it I want to sell it at a discount. Then it's just up to you to walk them down to a reasonable number.
Totally. And that's so true. And I love how you mentioned that because people think that cold call prospects aren't motivated for some reason, but I always say with people, like when you're marketing or you're in sales, it's like, think about what the customer is going through, right? So
Yeah.
if there's all these marketing messages out there, not even in real estate, just any telemarketing company, if someone is even remotely interested in hearing your offer after getting a cold call, like clearly there's something going on there, especially if
Yeah.
they're on a good list. So people they prejudge their leads a lot, Michael. And I think what happens is that they prejudge the leads and they don't think from their prospects perspective. Like, we've done deals off cold call where like it was a 3-4 month cycle, but it was a home run. And like the call was just step one. And once they were in the door, like you said, we sequenced them out through a certain campaign where they got, certain messages from us. And then ultimately they sold to us. And it's all about that sales process once they're in the door. And it's the thing I love about cold calling, and you obviously know this, it's like, you know, if the objective is to generate a lead, if we're going to look at that as the goal, you can generate a lead on a cold call a lot cheaper than you can if you're bidding on pay per click or if you're, sometimes doing direct mail. And that,
It's not even the same ballpark.
yeah, it's not even the same ballpark. Because
Yeah.
essentially you're getting to the same goal, but it's a lot cheaper. So you can ultimately, scale it up a lot better because it's just you got to put more gas, on the fire. So
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. And the
that's
key, I mean,
great.
just going back to it, the key is your team, right? I mean, if you're a solo guy, it's kind of tough because your pipeline gets filled up pretty quickly. And like most of us, most of the sales guys, we can't stand follow-ups, right? I mean, it kind of falls through the crack. We just don't like, and automation doesn't really work, right? You can like put some automation in there, but it's best when you have somebody talking to them. So you got to get a leads manager in, and that's going to really kind of change the game for you.
That's so true. So I was talking on the phone with a friend of mine the other day, and we were like, he was asking me about my follow-up system, and he's like, "Yeah, what automated system?" I'm like, "I don't really use an automated system, man. Like, I have my
Mhm.
assistant, like, or my lead manager. She does a really good job of we identify the prospects. We kind of score the prospects, just like you score the data, which we'll get into
Yeah.
in a minute. But we score the prospects and we communicate with them manually based on where they're at, because everyone is always going to appreciate that human touch. Yeah, you can get a couple here and there on automated sequences, but at the end of the day, like when someone is calling someone and they remember the conversation they had prior, that's where a lot of the value is built in that sales process. Cause it's not like they're just going through some big system and they're pressing one to talk to whatever. It's like a more of a relationship approach. And that gets us a lot more business than our competitors.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. 100%. We always follow up with what happened to that next. And then we always like, it's really short and sweet. I mean, I tell every one of our LMs is super simple script. What has anything changed from the last time we talked?
Yeah.
And that's
Love
it.
it.
I mean,
So
that's
true.
it. Yeah.
It's
I
so true.
mean, and then we just go on from that from whatever they say.
Love it.
So yeah, I mean, our cost per contract, when it was direct mail in our market, was about 4,500. Cost per
Yeah.
contract for cold calling is like 1,500. It's
Yeah.
like I said, it's not even the same ballpark, right?
Yeah, no, it's so true. And it's because of those economics. It makes so much sense. So that transitions into exactly what I wanted to go into now. So
Yeah.
Skip Force, I'm a client. I've used them a lot. They have phenomenal data and their
Thank you,
pricing
man.
is amazing. So I want to get like the backstory on Skip Force, man, because I remember one day I found out you started it and I'm like, oh, that's dope, dude. So give me the
Yeah.
backstory on it, man, because it really, I'm serious. It really is a lot different than all the other companies out there because of you guys, some of the things you offer, which we'll get into. So how did that start? And like, I mean, I'm just blown away by the quality of the data and everything about it.
That's awesome, bro. I appreciate you. First of all, I appreciate you being a client because we started about a year and a half ago, and so we source it from a different source than everybody else, like literally everybody else. And it's a blessing and it was a curse at the beginning because when we delivered it, the data came back. It was so different that people were like, "What the heck is this?" Right? And so we had to kind of repackage how we delivered that data. Kind of in context, how it started was that I was heavily texting. I was paying a premium for skip tracing. And then I'm thinking, man, there's got to be a better way, like all of us, right? I mean, I'm unemployable. I've never really had a real job. I've been a serial entrepreneur. So I'm always like, that's my mindset. Like, probably like every single person watching this thing is like, how do I find a better way, a more cost effective way of doing this? Because I'm spending a buttload on just skip tracing. So we just kind of dived super deep into it. At that time, I had a partner who was a data scientist and we just dove super deep into it. And we are able to source it straight from the carriers. And so what makes us different is that we're able to rank our numbers, and we can even tell you the time of day that phone number is most active. We call it the optimal call window. So it really shows our clients that, hey, listen, this data is different from everybody else's. It comes from a different spot, and it produces. And that's really key, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter what you say. If the data is bad, it doesn't matter. And so we've been very, very fortunate that we fine tuned it. We had some ups and downs at the beginning. There's no lie, but we really fine tuned it. We found a way to really deliver a good product to our customers.
That's awesome. So go into that a little bit. So you score the data and like what do you mean by that? I'm sure some listeners are like, I've never heard of that before. What the heck does that mean?
Yeah, man. So we've scored on activity for the last 12 months. So where we're not going to serve you very well is that for a super vacant list that people are dead for, over a year, right? Like if I put my dad's name in there and all his information, I don't care how exact it is. I'm not going to get anything back because he's been deceased for like 3 or 4 years, right? So how we do is activity level attached to that prospect for the last 12 months, and we can score it from A to K. The higher A is a higher graded number, so that type of stuff, and even the call window is the same thing. Everything scored from activity the last 12 months.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting you say that because I run into that sometimes where we get these prospects and they're just abandoned disasters. And it's like,
Yeah.
I have hired genealogists before to like find people and it's worked. But when you're,
Man, you
when
dive
it
deep,
comes,
bro.
dude, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
you're
That
awesome,
you
man.
do in
How you
Austin.
run your stuff is awesome, man.
Yeah, dude, it was actually that deal in Austin. I had to get a genealogist involved because I didn't know. I think there was 21 heirs. We did like 11 heirship affidavits because there's some more siblings. It
Sweet.
was insane,
I
dude.
think you
It was
told
like
me about that one actually.
it was ridiculous. I
Yeah.
felt like a detective when that thing closed. I was like, it took a year, dude. The cycle was a year. Like we call
Yeah.
it, we rehabbed the title because the title was all jacked up because of the estate or whatever. But
Yeah.
so it sounds to me like skip force when it comes to like the calling window, which when someone's pulling, let's say they just pull an absentee, like it's just a regular an absentee owner list, they've owned the property for 5 years. Now, assuming that those prospects have been active on their telephones, whether it's landlines or mobiles, that's where that scoring system, right? That's where that scoring system comes in. Then you can say like you said there's a window where it's the highest probability they're going to answer the telephone. Is that
Yeah,
what?
yeah. So I mean, it's a little bit advanced technology. Truthfully, very few people actually utilize it, right? I think most people utilize it on their follow-ups or something like that because it's super hard to kind of integrate into a platform. Like we use ZenCall, we're able to integrate it, but it's kind of cumbersome at this moment.
Yeah.
And I'm just not in the business to like develop another one. But we have found because we've done so many, like millions, that you'll get an increase of about 10% connection ratio, which doesn't sound like much, but truthfully, man, that's a
It's a
lot
lot. It's
over
double, man.
time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Over time, it's a lot, right? But the problem is it is an extra step, and most people do not like that extra step. But it's super cool technology. It's definitely beneficial. There's no doubt about that.
That's awesome. Now, what would you say, like you obviously work with investors nationwide, and I'm
Yeah.
sure probably some other industries at this point. Generally speaking, what is the best time to usually call most prospects? I'm not going to say every prospect because that's different, but mostly, what is a pretty good time that you've seen over using, millions of data sets is generally best to call somebody when it comes to, buying a house or potentially buying a house?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's pretty standard, dude. I mean, I think it's like in the mornings. Obviously, we have a higher connection ratio around lunch and around 5 o'clock. I
Yeah.
mean, it's usually when people are off
That-
work. You know,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, I know, right? I mean, so in our call centers, it's the same. There's always you have a spike right around those times. I mean, we're
Yeah.
still calling the rest of the day and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but even with our clients, like obviously your client, and we give you all the numbers, and we're like, hey, listen, the ones that are A through E, categorized A through E, that we consider those the best numbers. We still think that you should call everybody. Right.
Yeah.
And I think a couple of clients made that mistake with our data. It's where they're, hey, I'm just going to focus on the A through E's. But the thing is, man, I mean, it's just like niche list or broad list, right? You're going to miss out on opportunities that somebody's going to raise their hand. And such, and when it comes to cold calling and telecommunication marketing, it's really a shotgun approach, right? I mean, or you just run out of data. It's
Oh
just,
yeah, especially with texting. Especially
yeah,
with texting, it's like you can literally motor through, 1,000 freaking numbers in an hour. And
dude.
now
So
you're like,
yeah,
okay,
man, cold calling, same thing, man. I mean,
that's
like
awesome.
2,000 a day or something like that. I mean, texting an hour for sure. Especially delivery ratio is just like, man, it's just taking a hit right now.
Oh yeah, that was actually my last segment I wanted to cover before we start to wrap the show
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
What
sure, sure, man.
what are you seeing now? Like let's tell you what, man. I had a 10-to-1 return on San Diego text messaging. I made a fortune from it. However, I knew that at least in San Diego, the way that I was doing it didn't seem sustainable because I was like,
Mhm.
all right, I'm making a lot of money, but like, like it just everyone started. it just started changing. Like, and then at a time, before I actually turned it off in San Diego, it was taking me 3,000 texts to get one lead because it was just, obviously it was about like 500. And then it slowly got worse and worse and worse and worse. So what are you seeing? I mean, the time we're recording this, it's April of 2021. So, I mean, if this is, in the future, it might not be as relevant, but like as of today, like what are you seeing right now with text messaging? And then what solutions do you potentially have for people who want to still make that a viable channel?
Hmm. So I've done some research on this, not enough to where I probably could like go too deep into it. I do know that within the industry, the carriers are changing how they're delivering texts, and they're obviously flagging and cold calling through the flagging numbers or flagging delivering systems that are sending out a mass amount, right? That's why there's a couple of providers or platforms right now that are having a lot of troubles in delivery rate. And I think that moving forward, what they're going to do is that you're going to have to register your company to be able to send out massive volume, right? Of a cold prospecting on a cold prospecting. There's a terminology for it, but I don't want to go into it because I'll probably butcher it or something like that. I think in the future, on a cold, as a cold campaign, it's going to, I don't know if obsolete is the right word. I just don't think it's going to be super effective. I think it's always going to be effective on a follow up, on a
Yeah.
follow up basis, right? But we started pivoting from it probably about 6 to 8 months ago, and went back to went just heavily into cold calling. We just feel like that's a better medium, for that type of telecommunications marketing.
Yeah, no, the thing I've noticed with texting too is that there's less resistance with texting than calling, right?
Yeah.
It's easier to text someone than call. Man, call them. You got to physically like get on the dialer and like connect with them. But a
It
text
is, and
message,
I think you should still do both, bro. Because what we found is really kind of odd. Like, somebody you call somebody and they're like, "I'm not the owner." You text them and they're like, "Yeah, I'm the owner." Right. So I still think
yeah,
you should, if you can, if you have the bandwidth within your company, to go ahead
yeah,
and still incorporate both until they, until they change everything.
absolutely. That's it's phenomenal. I think this is an absolute masterclass in telemarketing with an absolute expert. So I'm sure the listeners are salivating right now. So
Too
I guess
funny.
I want to always wrap this. I used to do this in the beginning on our podcasts, but I kind of stopped doing it for a while. I want to see if we can take all of the points and topics we talked about today and tie it into a specific deal that you did, and then we can talk about how you found it, what channel, and then like the exit strategy,
Oh man,
and then we'll wrap all this up as
oh,
well.
that's gonna be a tough one, dude. That's gonna be real tough.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, give me the template again.
So like a deal you've done in the last, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and then how you found it, the general scenario with the house, nothing like doesn't have to be like a
Okay,
novel,
I
and then the
mean,
profitability and, profitability or rental,
yeah,
whatever.
man. Ours. I mean, truthfully, we are wrapping everything up on the retail side. Like we are just kind of exiting that 100%. We're doing almost 90%, 30% wholesale, the rest wholesale. And our hotels our return on hotel is kind of crazy right now.
Oh, I
So
bet.
almost 90% of our lead gen is cold calling. And so, well, we just wrapped up like two of them that we're closing today. We're going to close two of them today. Both of them are cold calls. Actually, I'm sorry, not true. There's one person. He has two houses. They're both renters, and he wants to get rid of it. And we got a hold of him. And the thing is, you're gonna have to excuse me because I'm not really in that on
Yeah,
that
you're
side
not
of the
involved in
business.
it. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I'm not involved at all, man. I mean, not at all anymore. I literally go when is closing, and I sign the papers and send the money, and that's
That's
about it.
amazing.
But I don't even sit in the meetings as much anymore. I'll sit in every once in a while. But from what I understand on this one, he couldn't get rid of it. One's going to be really a tough one, truthfully, because it's a couple of elderly people and they're paying super low rents. And
Oh, I do
this
that.
these deals break my heart, man. You know what I mean? These deals like totally
Yeah,
break my heart. And so we've already talked to them. We're like, hey, we're closing, literally closing tomorrow. I think it's either today or tomorrow. And we got to go and go, how much time do you need?
yeah,
And you know what
yeah.
I mean? How much time do you need to get your stuff in order? There's no other way because they're asking to stay and stuff like that. But I mean, on average, and I think that we're going to hit this mark on both of these. Our hotels are about $25,000 to $30,000. We just clean it up and put it right back on
It's
the market.
amazing.
We don't do anything. I literally do not do anything but clean it up and put it right back on the market. We just sold one yesterday. We made I think 38 on it, and exactly the same way. I mean,
Just
we didn't
cleaned
do
it up.
anything. We just cleaned it up. You know,
Yeah,
and then put it back. We had like I don't know 7 offers. It was crazy, right? But it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, man. Where we got him out the colder end of the cycle. We built the relationship with him. This dude was in Virginia, right? He was in the mortgage business, so he understand real estate a little bit. He didn't want anything to do with it. It was vacant for like 6 years. It was a cool little condo, and we've been talking to him for like 3 or 4 months. I actually closed this one, so I could actually say about this one. But I just built that relationship, and he had other investors that tried to talk to him. He didn't really like them, so it has that personal touch always. He trusted us. He knew that we would close, and we did. And he was
Look at
happy,
that.
and we were happy. Yeah.
Problem solved. I love it, man. I
Yeah.
love it. And
I
that's
hope I answered that question right,
you
man. Because,
answered
like I
that
said,
question.
that's yeah.
Perfect.
I'm
That
not
was
in
perfect.
that much anymore. I
You're your
miss
hardest
the
critic.
sales, dude. I do miss that portion of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you
You're a
answered that.
master at that, man.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. It's all about the relationship at the end of the day. No matter how you get in touch with them, I think cold calling is a great way to do it because it's gonna be a lot cheaper. So, and it's very scalable. So, I think people
Yeah.
know that by now. So, Michael, I mean, as we wrap the show up, what's the best way for them to kind of check out Skip Force? I mean, it's a great product. I use it. I wouldn't back something I don't use. So, what's the best way for them to kind of get plugged in? And what kind of services besides skip tracing do you guys offer? Because I know you have some cool stuff at Skip Force.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you. We're working on some pretty cool stuff. I mean, obviously, we have the cool calling service that I say pros. Skip Force, we have a membership portal there where we're able to give investors access to 8 cents data for $49 a month. This month of
Wow.
month. I don't really believe in that whole long contract. You know what I mean? Where you're like negotiating with some of these skip tracing services, man, where you're like to kind of sign on for something for like a year, right?
Yeah.
We feel
Oh,
like, hey, we want to provide a service of value. If you don't like it, man, no hard feelings right out of
yeah.
there. Otherwise, you could do just a standard pricing, which just starts at 12 and goes down to 8 cents. The quality score, call window, all that stuff goes with you. DNC scrubs is included as well. Um, Other than that, man, I mean, we're open, obviously, any affiliate relationships and stuff like that, and you're able to white label it as well. So we have a very standard pricing structure on white label, has everything to do with volume. You know,
Awesome.
yeah.
Sounds good to me. Anna, I know you're listening to this. So if we can put skipforce.com in the show notes. And then Michael, what's the best way if people wanted to get in touch with you? We'll make sure we put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, for sure, man. You can tell Mike at skipforce.com. Michael Singletary on Facebook. I think that's what it is. I'm not on Facebook that much anymore, but
Yeah, me neither. It's a freaking zoo over there.
is it really?
Yeah.
We're trying to run ads, man. Ads are tough.
Oh, there's a lot of people running ads on Facebook. Holy
Yeah,
cow.
yeah. The ads are tough right now, man. With the changes they made on Facebook, it's like, man, it's hard to target.
Yeah, it is, dude. It is for
Yeah,
sure. So we'll make sure we have that. Mike at skipforce.com. We'll have that in the
yeah,
show notes.
for sure.
Michael, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I had a blast catching up with you, and
I
I'm sure
appreciate you, man.
checking out Skip Force from this interview.
Awesome, my friend. Appreciate you.